Welcome back to Pivot Points. I'm your host, Dave Allen, founder of Brand Pie, the brand consultancy working with businesses to deliver impact at pivotal moments in their journey. Did you know what career you'd be in when you were in ninth grade? Alan Whitman did. He's a dreamer who challenges convention. He'll embark on a mission to make things happen, even when the path can't be seen. He spent nearly 8 years as Baker Tilly's CEO, transforming it into a global advisory powerhouse. And at the heart of that transformation is his radical leadership philosophy. Whether it's his approach to candid, uncomfortable feedback or taking pride in coaching and enabling the next generation, Alan represents the blueprint of a leader who can transform all that he touches. Well, welcome, Alan. Fantastic to have you on Pivot Points today. In order to just introduce yourself, would you mind just talking a little bit about yourself, your career, some of the pivotal moments in your life?
Great to be back with you. Alan Whitman, I'm a dreamer. I'm somebody who wants to break the mold and challenge convention. I'm a guy that is able to exist in the abstract and not the detail. Oddly enough, I am an accountant, so that's a little bit of a challenge there. I was a slow learner. I didn't build my career very quickly. I bloomed later in life, had wonderful experiences as a CPA, a tax advisor, and found myself having opportunities that I never would have imagined. And so my background, which I'm sure you'll dive into during this interview, is frankly very interesting in my mind. I am married to love of my life, Kim. I met her. I was on the Coopers and Lybrand side. She was on the PW side, and we met later in life. And we have two great children. Sophie, who's living in New York City, working for an expert network company, GuidePoint. Looks very much like me, so unfortunate for her. And we have Jack. Jack is a sophomore at San Diego State. He looks the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, big muscular kid doing great things. I split my time between Florida in the winter and Michigan in the summer, and we live on the water, whether it be on the salt water in the winter and fresh water in the summer. An avid wine collector, which means I drink my share of wine, unfortunately. Otherwise, the collection will expand to be something that I can't deal with. And I'm an avid sports fan. Luckily, was at the national championship game for Indiana University, my alma mater, when they won for the first time ever the American Football National Championship. So that's been a pleasure recently and a lot of fun. And really professionally love coaching and developing people. If there's one thing in my career and my responsibilities that I would not give up, which is why I went into coaching when I left Baker Tilly, it's connecting with young leaders and helping them, giving them the benefit of what I've seen, giving them the candid feedback, sometimes things that they don't want to hear. I ask them to respect it. They don't need to like it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but people need to hear that. I've gotten that in my entire career, and it's helped me. I don't like it, and I respect it. And so coaching and developing people is something that I love doing. Of course, the excitement of growth, the excitement of an acquisition, the excitement of a big win is that it's exciting. But what I really love to do is enable others to achieve things that they never would have imagined they could achieve, because that's really the story of my career. Who would have thought I would have become the international leader of Baker Tilly? Who would have thought I would even put my name in the hat to be the CEO of such a firm like Baker Tilly, and then be asked to help others make investments, and now doing it again. And as the logo on my screen, my pullover says, I'm Nichols, Cauley. I'm leading another organization. And so my experience of development, as well as having opportunities and taking advantage of them, has been extremely rewarding. There's been a lot of people that have helped me along the way, which I can share if you're interested. It's just been a lot of fun, and looking forward to the next chapter, the second half, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about the bang up to date. So that, when I saw you'd left Baker Tilly after a spectacular career there, I assumed that you probably wouldn't do another one of these CEO gig. So what's drawn you back in to this and made you sort of go, okay, there's another one in me still?
Great question. Look, when I left Baker Tilly, I went deep into coaching and advising. I was advising firms, C-suite, next generation professionals. I was advising PE firms and investors, boards on growth, strategy, transformation. And what I found was very rewarding. However, it was a number of different disparate gigs, different mandates. And while each one in their own right was fun, I was spreading myself too thin. And I really wanted to get back to one cause, to use my skills, my learnings, to do it again, to scale an organization again. As the book states, I wrote a book called Break the Mold, and it's really the story of the transformation that we enabled and succeeded in doing so at Baker Tilly. And I wanted the opportunity to do it as chapter 2. I found that the companies that I was consulting were taking on what I was sharing in a very aggressive fashion. That was great. I wanted to lead a group of people with them, not speak to them. So I jumped back in.
And do you think you missed leadership?
Oh, without question. I'm not ashamed to say I enjoy being a leader of a team. I enjoy challenging the status quo. I enjoy working with people to pave a new road. So sure, I did. I did enjoy it. And specifically, I enjoyed the development of people, development of practices and businesses, the strategy of it. So, nobody's really asked me that question, Dave, and I really appreciate you doing it. I'm not ashamed to say, yeah, I did miss it.
I would miss it. I would hate not to be running something or helping people and developing people. It's almost addictive in a sense.
Yeah, it very much is. It is addictive.
So if I go back into the past and sort of ask you to talk a little bit about, when was the moment you thought, I could actually lead a business? Because we all don't come out of university or college thinking, I'm going to be CEO in 30 years' time or 20 years' time or 10 years' time. But there's a moment where suddenly people around you give you the impression that maybe you could, and then you start getting the confidence. When in your life did you start to sense you might have the capabilities to run a large organization and motivate people?
It wasn't until just before I was elected to be the CEO. I had other assignments that were large, and challenging, and risky. It wasn't until I was sitting next to a former partner of mine in a van going to an offsite social event where Lynn Gardenier, partner out of Janesville, Wisconsin, leaned over and said, "You need to put your name in the ring to be our next CEO. We trust you. You've got what it takes." And of course, I didn't believe her, and then started thinking, well, look, if she, being a very successful client partner in a non-large, smaller market, says, "We trust you," that's the impetus for being a leader. People need to follow. You can always say you can do it, but unless people follow. And so when she actually had that conversation with me, I'm like, wow, okay, I've got the skills. I've got the mindset. I'm going to make a run for this. Now, it goes back prior to that, Dave, when I just joined what was then Virchow Krause, now Baker Tilly. So a month into my joining, my predecessor, Tim Christian, who in and of his own right is one of the greatest of all times in this profession, he came to me and said, "Hey, it's yours if you want it." And I said, "Well, what is?" And he says, "The international thing." And I said to him, "Well, what is that?" And he said, "I don't know, but you'll figure it out. I have confidence in you to figure it out." And I figured it out. And so I was leading something that had never been done before at then Virchow Krause, was very counter to the culture of the organization and the history of the organization. So for me to be able to do that and make a difference in what was a very traditional organization showed me that, you know what, maybe I do have something unique to offer. Now, did I think it was going to lead me to be the CEO? No. But you look back on your career and you see the building blocks. And that was definitely a building block. A building block before that was when I was working in Cincinnati for Cooperson Lybrand and working with one of my mentors, John DeStefano. He taught me the business of leading a practice the X's and O's, the debits and credits. And so that was a building block. So you look at your career, and that's one of the things I counsel my coachees on is you've got to build the layers of your experiences so that when people look at you, they say, well, they've got this. Why shouldn't we consider them? And so there were a couple of layer building activities. The international thing was an enormous one because it got me to be known throughout the firm because I was new and I didn't have a big book of business. I didn't come from a big market. So I was just a piece in a puzzle. That opportunity though showed me I had something unique, and that I believe is what showed through when they were interviewing me to be the CEO.
Yeah. No, when you think about the sort of the rational side of work and, doing all of the things that accountants have to do in order to sort of meet the needs of their clients, but then the more emotional things you have to do to guide people, to motivate people, to tune into their psyche. So many leaders I've spoken to talk about the emotional side being much more important than the rational side. Doing the job is sort of like, that's what you're trained to do. But few companies train their CEOs to actually deal with all of those emotional things. You learn it on the job. You learn it from mentors. What's your reaction to the rational versus the emotional in your world?
Oh, I think you're spot on. Look, when I was elected, a partner of mine said to me, Alan, we're going to pay you 10% of your compensation for 90% of what you do. It's running the business. We're going to pay you 90% of your compensation for 10% of what you do, whether that means making the hard decisions, whether that means doing the emotional things, whether that be that stuff that's just not so, it's more squishy. And look, in my profession, professional services, CPA firm, advisory firms, the emotional side, the people side is critical. We've got great technicians. People knew how to do all the technical work. It was getting people to work together, getting the firm to shift from being horizontal, vertical, me and mine, to horizontal, us and ours, not my client, our client. And so it's interesting, Dave, when you look at Baker Tilly, everybody knows the numbers, right? We went from 475 million to $1.5 billion in 8 years. We did 20 plus mergers. We grew 50% organically. All the numbers, everybody knows those. What they're not aware of is what happened inside the four walls of the company and the transformation and the mindset shift. And that comes into the people and the emotion things. Because as somebody said to me once, Alan, we're not concerned with where you're asking us to go or what you're asking us to do. We're concerned with what you're asking us to give up. We've been doing it this way for 20 years, 10 times a day, every day of the year, times thousands of people. There's a lot of repetition and it's just automatic. That's what we're fearful of losing. And when he said that to me, Todd was his name, I'm like, that was brilliant. Now I get it. So yes, I did learn it along the way. Now, I had a lot of help. I was very, very focused on bringing in professional coaches for both me personally to be the best CEO I could be, but also my leadership team, because none of us understood how to be the leadership team of a 700 million, 800 million building. This is the largest firm we ever worked at. And we needed some help, not on delivering great service, but on being leaders and the effectiveness of a team. We learned so much more. Our meetings were so much better. And so that part of the job, the responsibility is enormous and oftentimes undervalued and underrecognized by leaders.
What type of executive coaching were you bringing them in to do? Was this one-on-one or was this group stuff?
It was both. I had a coach early on in my rise in the firm, and then that gentleman, Bill Lindbergh, retired. And so then I hired Lori Zukin of Zukin Institute. Lori is a wonderful coach. She was coaching me personally and helping me through things. And there's a number of things that she helped me with. I brought her in also to observe my senior leadership team because I was unhappy with our effectiveness as a team. And look, everybody is a technician. Everybody had their own skills, and working across a team was something new. And so she taught us so many things about who people are and how they connect in, team member profiles, and, where are they in the wheel of skills and wheel of personalities. so that I could see how to best enable the team, knowing what everybody's bias was. Are you a dreamer? Are you a technician? Are you a motivator? Are you an organizer thruster type person? And so she helped me and she helped them understand how to make decisions and how to work across conflict in a team. And so it was both personal, and then she actually became a professional coach for a couple of my leaders individually who requested additional advice. And it accelerated our performance dramatically.
What do you think it sort of changed in the way you think? Was there any sort of like specific things that stick out and you go, I used to be like this, and she completely reorientated me and I realized I needed to be like this? Was it a pivotal moment in that?
Well, there's a couple things for me, but as it relates to the team, and I'll get to me in a second, as it relates to the team, the biggest thing that she enabled us to do was understand the others.
Right.
Understand who the others were, how they consumed information, how much information they needed to make a decision, how they made decisions, so that it's not just hitting everybody with a hammer. It was more the emotional thing. I mean, people are who they are. Some are the dreamers and the visionary people, and some are the technicians and the doers, and they don't collide unless you are aware of the other. And so for me and for the others, it helped me understand how people were taking on information and how they were synthesizing information in order to make a decision. Because to me, it was simple. You get the information, you make a decision. Well, not for everybody else. And so it helped us balance the innate characteristics and behaviors of people to the task at hand. So that was fantastic. Look, Lori had the mandate to tell me anything. If I was making a mistake or I was coming across negatively or I wasn't looking the way I needed to, she had my expectation that she was supposed to tell me. So I'll give you a quick story. And you would think this is small, but it's huge. As a CEO of a large organization, I'm speaking a lot, just like I am today. And how you come across and the words you use are critical in conveying your message. So in one of our calls, she hung up, she lifted a placard with a number on it, 65. And I said, okay, I'll bite. What is 65? She said, that's the number of the word you said in the last minute. And I was like, come on, no. And so we started counting and gosh darn it, she was right. I used the word because I had to get my brain to catch up with my mouth and I was out of sync. And so I said, well, I got to fix that. And I did. I don't use very often compared to where I was. And it helped me be a better communicator. So it's more of the tactical things, not just the emotional. It was the gift that I keep giving to others. And again, they don't like it. I had a young leader. She used the word all the time. I pulled her aside. I've got to give you some feedback. Now, she wasn't too happy with it, but then she did the same thing I did. So again, there's all sorts of feedback that coaches give leaders. And if they're given the opportunity to be blunt and be direct, it's going to help. And so I'm a huge fan of coaching. I'm a huge fan of candor. I'm a huge fan of development because, you get to be a leader, Dave, and people expect you to be able to develop yourself. And we all can't develop ourselves. And even if it's simply speaking to somebody and just having the time to talk out loud raises an idea. And that's where I think it's so powerful.
No, so if I go back a long way in time, well, not too long, but in terms of, you deciding to come into accountancy, what sort of brought you into the accounting world? Was that, do people sit at 8 years old and think I'm going to be an accountant?
It's interesting you say that, Dave. So it's in the book Break the Mold, 9th grade. So first year of high school, for whatever reason, I knew I wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to go work for Arthur Andersen. Now, the Arthur Andersen thing I understand because my father's company, he was in technology. My father's company used Arthur Andersen, and somehow somebody mentioned Arthur Andersen. His friend was the controller, the CFO. Why I wanted to be an accountant, I have no idea. But I do remember, 9th grade, I proclaimed I'm going to be an accountant or CPA, and I want to go work for Arthur Andersen. Now, I didn't go work for Arthur Andersen. I ended up starting with Price Waterhouse, was hired in to be a tax professional. I spent 6 months in audit, My first assignment was Green Bay Foods, and I had to do an inventory, and it was enormous outside barrels of pickles, and because they made the pickles and relish for McDonald's hamburgers in the sub-zero cold. And I knew I never wanted to be an auditor after that. I wanted to be a tax guy. But to your point, eight years old, it wasn't 8 years old. It was whatever it was, 14.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't know, somebody hit me in the head. I'm so glad I did, because it's been a phenomenal journey. But it was ninth grade.
Yeah. And I'm interested in the Arthur Andersen versus PwC because I know them both pretty well, and they are massively different. I mean, in terms of culture, mindset, behaviors, everything.
Yeah.
And Arthur Andersen, I think they used to call them the Marine Corps, and they were very disciplined, whereas PwC is a bit more, shall I say, genteel and global.
Yeah. So here's the story. And it goes to people. So I'm going to go PW first and then back to Andersen. And mind you, I wanted to work for Andersen. I didn't.
Yeah.
So I interviewed with one of the few, if not at the time, only HR partners. Back then, you didn't make partner as being a chief HR officer. PwC was progressive enough to have a partner as an HR leader. And his name was Les Shanto. Now, he since has passed away very early. I had a sickness. I don't know what it was. Shame that and we had a wonderful conversation. He was a person. I was nobody. I was a young kid in Indiana University. What did I know? But he made me feel like something. And so to your point, they had an aura about themselves. They still had a pristine brand, a Tiffany brand, and they still wore white shirts and ties. They were just different than Andersen. So Les Shanto was the reason I went to Pricewaterhouse at the time.
Yeah.
Let's contrast that to Arthur Andersen. Well, I told you I recently attended the national championship game for the college football sport, Indiana versus Miami. I went to Indiana. Wonderful experience. Well, my senior year in college, in university, the basketball team won the national championship under Bobby Knight, very storied coach. So I was in Chicago with my soon-to-be brother-in-law, and that night Indiana was playing Michigan in basketball. We went to a bar, and I somehow was overserved. I'm sure it was my fault, and I
overserved. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah. So I find my way back to the hotel, and it was not a good night, and I woke up with the flu.
Yeah.
AKA a hangover.
Yeah.
And I struggled through I got a job interview. Now, it wasn't in Chicago. I think it was in Indianapolis, but I just took that as a sign. Maybe this isn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel right. Of course, I was, had the flu, the hangover. So look, all good plans sometimes don't work out. And I'm glad it was PW and then Cooper's, then PwC, and then the rest is, as well.
No. I mean, those big accounting firms, they find the personalities, the people who fit. And if you don't fit, they eject you like a virus. So I think you probably found the right one.
I did. It wasn't a straight line, but nonetheless, that's the story. And I do, that is in the book.
Yeah. Now, I do see a slight tension between your opening line, I'm a dreamer, and a tax accountant. Talk me through that one.
Wow. Maybe a dreamer is a little bit incorrect word. I'm one who challenges convention. I'm one who thinks things can happen, even if I don't know the pathway to happen. Like, I'll give you an example. I remember in 2018, we were doing a strategy redo, not even a refresh. And we were working with a very well-known consultant here in the U.S. when I was at Baker Tilly. And I wanted to put an organizational goal out there. And I said, listen, it's 2018. By 2025, I want to be $1.5 billion. And two of my senior leaders, the more mathematician leaders, went in the back room. They looked at me like I was crazy, which I was. Mm. And they went in the back room, they did the math. And they said, Alan, we can't do this. We'd have to do this, this, and this. I think it would have been doubling it in 7 years. Or 6 years, whatever it was. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you say this and we don't achieve it, your legacy will be tarnished. And we don't want to be part of that either. And I said, never mind. We're going to set that goal. 1.5 billion by 2000. I didn't have the pathway. I knew what we needed to do, but I didn't have the, well, we achieved it 2 years early because we did a lot of great things. So to me, I don't want to be told no, because even if we got to 1.3 versus 1.5 or 1.4 versus 1.5, we would have crushed it. And we did, but we got to 1.5 without the pathway. So to me, that's the dreamer. That's the guy that says, hey, we can do this. I don't exactly know how, but we're going to do this. So going back though, yes, I was a tax accountant. I was a tax advisor, but I sure as can be, Dave, wanted to get out of doing that technical work as soon as I could. I did enough to survive, but wanted to get into building things and didn't want to be the technical guy. I knew enough to be dangerous. I got myself in trouble a number of times and I needed to call in reinforcements, but I did just enough to survive in that space so I could find my way elsewhere. And I did. And I unknowingly paved or gave people confidence to allow me to do things that others may not have done.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, just listening to you, I sense you like change and embrace change. And a lot of people do not like change. They like it to stay the status quo. So what is it about leaders that seem to love change?
Well, so as I said earlier in this discussion, words matter. And change is a very negative word. It depicts something happening to you, not with you. Mm. So during our journey, we changed the word change to progress. Instead of change management, it's progress management. Progress denotes things happening together with you. And so I like progress. I like trying new things. I get bored with the same thing, whether it's my workout routine, whether it's a book. And so do I like change? Okay, maybe I do. Do I accept change and progress? I think that's a better description of me because I know we need to continue progressing. I know we need to find different ways to achieve the end goal, whatever the future state is. And so I'm willing to take on new ways of doing things. Do I like change? I mean, look, of course, I'm getting old. I like the way I do things. I like a hotel room to be this certain way, and I like my routine. And I also know that in order to improve my physical fitness, I need to change it up. So it's a balance.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about AI, because there's a lot happening at the moment, and there's a lot of sort of potential impact on the accounting and legal professions. Do you see it as an opportunity? How are you thinking about Nichols, Cauley, and how that AI needs to be brought in? And I've been thinking about it a lot in my own company, and we are well down the path of building a sort of position of AI leadership. And it requires a great deal of thought. It's not going as fast as people seem to think it is in the real world. It's going way faster when you listen to technology people. But I'd love your perspective on how you think AI is going to shift the needle.
So you'll gauge how important I think this is by this statement. The first person I hired upon knowing that I was going to be the CEO of Nichols Cauley was a young man who was a CPA, and he is a technology, automation, and AI specialist. That was the first hire.
Says it all.
It does say it all. It's fabulous. The partners are eating it up because they're seeing new ways of doing things. My perspective is this on this. The goal of transformation, the goal of business is to eliminate friction and increase velocity. You can do that many different ways. One way is through technology and also AI. So let's not forget technology. It's not all AI. AI is technology on steroids, which is very important, but let's not forget the little innovations just using technology. And so the goal that Greg Stone in my firm, my company, has is to eliminate friction. The 3 hours accumulating this data, the 2 hours of here, the ease of transitioning documents and information across an organization. If you can do that and you build capacity within individuals and you make their job easier, they're going to be bought into this. It's when we say we're shoving technology and AI down your throat and you will accept it because we have to do that, meaning we have to implement technology and AI. That's when people, oh, wait, oh. No, the goal is to eliminate friction. Let me give you an example. Individual tax returns. Now, in your country, Inland Revenue does it for you at the basic level. In our country, we do it manually. The old way of doing things is you touch an individual tax return, the preparer 3 or 4 or 5 times along the way. We got to touch it once or twice, and that's it. There's no reason to touch it and go back and go back. So how do we take those touches out and remove the human friction, the human intervention, the friction that comes from human intervention so that things are smooth, seamless, and the velocity is increased, the delivery of velocity. So his job is, okay, how do we do that? How do we eliminate human intervention? That builds capacity so that people can do additional tasks. They can learn more valuable things to deliver. I'll give you a story. I was at a meeting of the AICPA puts on what they call the G400. So it's the 100th largest firm to the 500th largest firm. And a very well-known, experienced, expert AI leader got up and said, I'd love you to talk at your tables about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far along in the AI journey are you? So I listened. Remember, I'd been with $1 billion plus firm, and these are all $20 to $30 million firms. So I was just listening. I didn't want to influence. And they all were like, well, we're a 3 out of 10. And I'm like, after a while, I'm like, you're crazy. You're not at a 3 out of 10. You've got one little, recording thing. You're not, nobody, come on. I mean, that means that Google and OpenAI are at 10,000 out of 10. So I said, guys, the goal here is to eliminate human intervention and to get rid of friction. That's your goal. So how far along are you on that? Well, we're not very far at all. Well, then you're not very far in implementing technology and AI. That's the goal. That's the pill that's going to solve for the human intervention ailment. It's the ailment you need to treat, not taking the pills.
Yeah, I love that.
And they were like, never really thought about that. So it's very important. I think it's a huge opportunity. I think it can recast how things are done. I do think it's going to speed up. Again, it's going to be like hockey stick. The question is, are we achieving our goal of eliminating friction by all the things we're implementing? Because if we're not, then it's all for naught.
No, I'll end with one more sort of question, and I'd love your perspective on how you would advise. I know you love mentoring, coaching young people. So how would you advise your, 18, 21-year-old who's thinking of coming into the profession? What sort of things, guidance, are they going to be the same people? Because if you take that friction out, a lot of that friction was actually dealt with by junior individuals in the profession. It gives you an opportunity to hire maybe different people, maybe more dreamers. I don't know, but it'd be fascinating to get your perspective on what sort of advice you would give to those people today.
1, read. Find everything you can read. Books from former CEOs, books from leaders, social media clips so you can get information. Information is critical. Now, I'm not a big fan of scrolling, so build a bot. I just had my tech and AI guy build an agent, a bot, to deliver information to me every day. And that's not anything fancy. So build your own bot and get the information so you can consume the data so you can build your mindset. Read as many books as you can from leaders so you can understand how they think. I do it, and I'm a CEO. I read any book I can from a former CEO, whether they're in my profession, which aren't very many. And that's really why I wrote my book, because I want people to benefit from my experiences, giving it back. But, read Hastings' book. Well, he formed Netflix. What would I learn from Netflix founder? I learned a ton. Or Mark Benioff at Salesforce, or David Cody at Honeywell. Great books. You put those pieces together, make that puzzle. So that's 1. 2, you're right. Things are going to change. But let me give you an example of why I think it's not as critical as it may feel. And moreover, it's not just the individual's responsibility, it's the corporate's responsibility. So I was a tax advisor. I must have prepared over 300 to 400 individual tax returns over my career, even if it was 250. But it was after the 50th or the 75th, I stopped learning. I wasn't learning it. The only reason I was doing it, Dave, was to charge billable hours to achieve revenue. So I was just a machine, but I wasn't learning anything. So what if we automate the extra 300 that I did, and I really only learned on the first 100, and then I was able to do other work, or I was able to develop with a partner, senior partner, different skills, rather than just keep being a machine to charge hours. Does that sound so bad? Actually, that's probably what we want to have happen. And if we can have somebody else through technology or a complementary workforce do the 251st and 300th and 350th tax return that I'm not learning on. It was a career non-value added task. It was not a career value added assignment. It wasn't building my career other than billing hours. Why not build the business around that than build the business on a production base? The firm that goes, I was just talking to Mark Mendola. Mark Mendola was the number 2 under the CEO, Tim Ryan of PwC. Mark and I are very close. And we agreed the firm that goes from production to outcomes is going to win. And so, yeah, it's going to be different going forward, but it's going to be different good. If the corporates just realize they've got to progress their operating model, whether it's through technology, whether it's through other workforce platforms, what have you, it will be a good thing. It's going to be painful as we move through the tight squeeze in the tunnel. But on the other side, it's a whole new environment. Whether that's technology, whether that's other alternative workforce schemes, or it's AI.
That's a brilliant vision and a very insightful sort of perspective. Now, when we finish these sort of the serious part of the conversations, we usually drift to a little fun fact. And now, I was told you were a good bowler. Now, you're going to have to expand on what a good bowler means.
So 10-pin bowling. Right? Ball with 3 holes in it, right?
Yeah,
bowling,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. I realize we're crossing the ocean here.
I'm going cricket here.
Yeah. No. I was, my 2 sports were baseball, American baseball. I was the first left-handed catcher, and that's not very common because left-handed catchers with right-handed batters is a challenge. So at the ripe old age of 8 or 9 years old, I volunteered to be a catcher, and I became a catcher, and I was a very good one defensively. Couldn't hit with a lick. Hit the ball, and then I became a bowler, and I was pretty darn good as a bowler, and it was a lot of fun. I was a north of 200 average bowler, which is good, and it's fun to. I actually, Dave, I just went bowling with a bunch of friends. We were skiing with some friends, and so we went bowling, and I was very quiet. I didn't tell anybody about it. My wife knows about it, so I get up on the lane and I start bowling, and they're looking at me like, "Wait a minute, are you a ringer?" And so we had a lot of fun.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Alan. Some fantastic insights, some fantastic learnings. Thank you for sharing all of that. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pivot Points. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more fascinating conversations with industry leaders in our previous episodes. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more about Brand Pi and how we deliver impact in the pivotal moments that matter to you, head over to brandpi.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.